Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. In today's episode, I want to talk about the article that just got released this morning in Cycling News, where Dries De Bondt, the AG2R rider, says that he was trying to let everybody know that his contract is up for the 26th season next year, and that's why he was pulling on the front on stage 20, the magical stage 20 up Col de Fineste, where we see Dries De Bondt pulling Richard Carapaz, and we see him pulling Isaac Del Toro, the pink jersey. Well, he says in this article that before the stage, he talked with the coach from EF Education that happens to be the coach of Richard Carapaz. Richard Carapaz, second on the general classification. Isaac Del Toro's wearing the pink jersey. We get into the Col de Fineste climb with 45 kilometers to go. We see Richard Carapaz with EF Education lighting the race up. This stage is going to give and give and give all kinds of details throughout the next few years. So you should always pay attention to this stage 20 of the Giro to tell you. But EF Education's on the front. They're drilling it. Richard Carapaz attacks. Isaac Del Toro follows him. Now, before the start of this climb, with a 10-minute gap, was 31 riders up the road. 31. It's a ton. But we have Wout van Aert in that front group, and Wout van Aert is the teammate of Simon Yates, so Visma Bike's third on the general classification. The Visma Bike rider Simon Yates bridges the gap to the two riders, first and second on the general classification, with Richard Carapaz already attacking and putting in some pressure on Isaac Del Toro. But Isaac Del Toro looked marvelous at the beginning on the Col de Fineste, and now he's just following behind the wheel of Richard Carapaz. Simon Yates bridges the gap. Simon Yates attacks 3 times. Richard Carapaz closes it. Del Toro closes behind, and then Simon Yates attacks for a 4th time and gets an immediate gap. Okay, now this thing starts getting a little bit interesting, and the story flows with the cycling article this morning from Dries De Bondt. Simon Yates passes Dries De Bondt, goes up the road. He's holding about a 20-second gap, if not 22-second gap, when we look at the 2 leaders behind. And now Dries De Bondt from AG2R comes into the picture. We see the AG2R rider looking right, looking left, looking right. He's standing up on his pedals. He's waiting for Richard Carapaz to connect with the AG2R rider so he can start pulling. Now, again, you go into the article, you know that he set this up earlier in the morning from the coach there of EF Education, so now he's pulling on the front. The only problem with this deal here that Dries De Bondt believes he's making right now with Richard Carapaz, this is not what Richard Carapaz wants. Richard Carapaz wants Simon Yates up the road. That's why Richard Carapaz let Simon Yates go up the road. He let Simon Yates go up the road because he wants Isaac Del Toro in the pink race leader's jersey. He wants the UAE Team Emirates rider to have to ride the front and to get in the wind and to have to tire himself out. So Dries De Bondt at this moment, and the coach from EF Education for bringing this tactic up before the stage and chatting some with the AG2R riders. I don't know the exact conversation they had, but from the article we know they chatted a little bit, and this scenario might play into the effect on this stage 20, and now it's actually happening at this moment. Dries De Bondt's on the front. Richard Carapaz is sitting second, third Isaac Del Toro. But keep in mind, when Dries De Bondt's pulling on the front and pulling back Simon Yates, it was Richard Carapaz that let Simon Yates go up the road because, again, he wants Isaac Del Toro to get on the front. So Dries De Bondt's actually not helping the scenario out at this moment unless Dries De Bondt can pull so fast that he can hurt the legs of Isaac Del Toro, but Dries De Bondt is not a climber. He's going to pull for what I believe to be about 400, maybe 500 meters, and possibly cut the time down in half up there to Simon Yates. And how do I know that Carapaz doesn't want this to happen is because when the cameras come back after we see Chris Harper and we see Vera up there, the Arkea Samsic rider, hitting the gravel section, when we go back and find the 2 riders, first and second on general classification, they don't have Dries De Bondt with them, but now they're side by side, and it's Ethan Hayter that's on the back of that group. That's the 3rd rider, but the 3rd rider's not Dries De Bondt, so he's already been dropped. But you look at Richard Carapaz, and he's side by side right now with Isaac Del Toro, which tells you Richard Carapaz didn't want the gap closed anyways. So Dries De Bondt in the article where he tells us he's trying to help the EF Education rider out because he's been letting all the teams know that his contract's available for the 26th season, his tactics on stage 20 were not actually helping Richard Carapaz unless he can go so fast with Richard Carapaz in the draft and Isaac Del Toro 3rd. So these 2 riders, 2nd and 3rd behind Dries De Bondt, have even amount of wind on them. So if Dries De Bondt can go fast enough to hurt the legs of Isaac Del Toro, that's great. But I can tell you from experience, if I take you into the Vuelta in 2013 when I won on L'Angliru, that day that it was Vincenzo Nibali that bridged up to Paulo Tiralongo, his teammate, and when his teammate was setting tempo up L'Angliru for me and for Vincenzo Nibali, he's actually doing it for Vincenzo, but I'm sitting third position, much like Isaac Del Toro is here on this stage 20 of the 25 Giro. I'm sitting third position, and Paulo Tiralongo can't set the pace fast enough to hurt me. He's actually just bringing us closer to the finish line at a smooth pace, and I'm back there actually recovering at this moment after I've had multiple attacks after attacks after attacks from Vincenzo Nibali. Now, I back you up on that Angliru stage in 2013. It was the final mountain stage of the Vuelta a España that year. And when I back you up, Vincenzo Nibali attacked, and he went up to Juan Antonio Flecha, the Spanish rider that was riding, I believe, at the time for Rabobank. His contract was up. Maybe it wasn't Rabobank. Maybe it was one of the other smaller teams up north there. I believe it was. But Juan Antonio Flecha's contract is up that year, and as he's pulling on the front for Vincenzo Nibali, and I'm not on the wheel yet of Vincenzo Nibali, now that was dramatically helping Vincenzo Nibali out, and I had to close that gap while Vincenzo Nibali's getting a draft. So that could have changed a Grand Tour results. When we look at Dries De Bondt in stage 20 of the 25 Giro d'Italia, that could have changed the result if Richard Carapaz needed that gap closed, but he didn't want that gap closed. So Dries De Bondt was actually not helping Richard Carapaz out any, because Richard Carapaz wanted Del Toro in the win. Okay, some other examples. If we go back into the 21 Giro d'Italia, why am I bringing that up? Well, 21 Giro d'Italia, we'll see in the later mountain stages that Ineos' team split up coming down the penultimate descent, and the peloton split in half, and it was Danny Martinez in the second half of the peloton. Colombian rider Danny Martinez for Ineos. His teammate Egan Bernal, who goes on to win the Giro d'Italia, is in the front group for Team Ineos. He's Colombian too. So they drop back, Team Ineos do, they drop back Filippo Ganna to go back, and he's helping with Puccio to bring Danny Martinez up to that front group of the peloton. Well, they come across the rider, the Colombian rider, Sebastian Milano, and I called it Country Love in that edition of the Butterfly Effect. And Sebastian Milano gets on the front and helps close the gap for Filippo Ganna and Salvatore Puccio from Team Ineos. That, of course, allows them to get to the first group of the peloton there with Egan Bernal, the race leader. Now, those two guys can ride the front. We come into the final climb, and we see Simon Yates is attacking up the road. Why am I bringing this up? Simon Yates is attacking up the road, and on the 2025 Giro d'Italia, Simon Yates was attacking up the road, and he's getting abused back there from Dries De Bondt that's trying to close the gap, that cuts the gap in just about half. Well, at the 2021 Giro d'Italia, Simon Yates was getting abused from the Colombian Country Love back there, Sebastian Milano, who now has Egan Bernal chasing him on the wheel of his two teammates while Simon Yates is going solo up the road. Egan Bernal is brought all the way into 2.5 kilometer to go on that stage where Danny Martinez finally blows, and then Egan Bernal has to set tempo on the front of the peloton there. And remember, if he didn't have Danny Martinez dropping him off at 2.5 kilometers to go from that Country Love, that possibly had help from Milano, that saved Puccio, that saved Filippo Ganna to go deeper in the stage, that saved Jonathan Castroviejo on the final climb, that saved Danny Martinez to go into 2.5 kilometers to go. Now Egan Bernal is not in any threat of losing the pink jersey to Simon Yates, so he can set a steady tempo up that climb and control the race to hold on to the pink jersey there at the Giro d'Italia. So we look at that and some other stories where we look, that was Country Love 2025 at the Giro d'Italia stage 20. That was deal making there because one rider, Dries De Bondt, needs a contract for the 26 season. Now I'll give you another example. If we go into the 2021 season of the Basque Country, that year Brandon McNulty, the American rider, was holding the race leader's jersey at the Basque Country on the final stage, and he had none other than Tadej Pogacar as his teammate on UAE Team Emirates. We look at Primoz Roglic that got up the road, and he has two riders for company. Hugh Carthy is there, and we look at David Gaudu from FDJ. Those two riders would not work with Primoz Roglic until Primoz Roglic made a deal with those two riders that they can fight it out amongst themselves for the final stage honor up the summit finish of Arate, and Primoz Roglic would take the general classification. So we have friendships, Country Love, we have art of the deal being made in terms of your contracts due next year, and then, of course, we have where you want to win the general classification, so you give the stage victory away. There's all kinds of ways of looking at it, and of course, if you go back into the early days of cycling, it was just pure cash, where favorite strong riders would just pay riders off to do it. Now we go into 2012, the Vuelta a España, where it was Alberto Contador that had an old teammate of his, Paulo Tiralongo, that helped him once he dropped Hakeem Rodriguez between the two mountain climbs and the summit finish climb. He had Paulo Terralongo that set a blistering pace through the valley that helped Alberto Contador win the stage and win the general classification. So why did he do that? Well, you got to back it up into 2011 and go into the Giro d'Italia, and you'll see where Alberto Contador handed over the stage victory to Paulo Terralongo. Now you go all the way into 2013 at the Vuelta a España. It was Paulo Terralongo that was setting the tempo right there on the Langaroo that was helping Vincenzo Nibali, but then they were teammates, so it was totally acceptable. So when you start thinking about what was happening at stage 20 of the Giro d'Italia in 2025, this stage is magical because it's a teaching moment for multiple people, especially the director sportif, Fabio Baldalto, that was in the car that told Isaac Del Toro, oh, remember, one time he told him, remember, Simon Yates is up the road and Wout van Aert's up the road. But what they also have to remember is that when you let a 31-rider group go up the road, the art of the deal could always be in that group there where somebody could be a friend of someone, they could be from the same country of someone, they could be old teammates. And guys, they could just be dating somebody's sister that's back there that's bridging across, or they could just want to help someone out because they happen to be friends and they had coffee together on a Sunday afternoon ride after one of the races. Now, if you're feeling bad for Simon Yates because it looked like he got a little abuse from Dries De Bondt at the 25 Giro d'Italia and at the 21 Giro d'Italia from Sebastian Milano with Team Ineos chasing him, don't feel too bad because let me back the film up for you when Simon Yates attacked. As Simon Yates is attacking Richard Carapaz and Isaac Del Toro, he's getting a gap on them immediately, and then he bridges up to Jacopo Moscal from Lidl Trek. The Lidl Trek rider sees him coming, and then he starts accelerating with Simon Yates sitting on his wheel, and you know he's accelerating hard because he rides the front for about 200-300 meters, and he passes the Intermarché rider Francisco there, so you know he's putting on a bit of an effort. And that was probably more crucial work right there for Simon Yates that Jacopo Moscal did than Dries De Bondt did for Richard Carapaz, because, again, Richard Carapaz didn't want to close the gap to Simon Yates. He wanted the gap to be open. So Dries De Bondt, you picked the wrong rider. You should have been helping out Simon Yates, and you might be riding for Visma Lease Bike next year in 2026. Instead, you really didn't do much to help out Richard Carapaz for EF Education, so I don't know if that deal is going to come through for you in 2026. But like and subscribe if it does. Maybe we'll bring this stage up again because stage 20 of the 25 Giro d'Italia is the stage that just keeps on giving. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys for the next video real soon.